Surveillance video shows a dark-colored car pull up to a house on Bainbridge Drive in Southfield.
This murder was premeditated.
A person gets out of the car and walks inside. But minutes later, the suspect Southfield police have identified as Riley Donaldson exits the home.
Enter the front driver's seat of the Chrysler 300 and quickly speed away from the crime scene.
Ada Mae Simmons-Jones was found with gunshot wounds to her chest, back, and a graze to the head. The victim's mother-in-law and 3-year-old grandchild were home at the time.
Both were unharmed.
Police body cam video reveals what happened the next day.
Hands up, hands.
Donaldson's car was tracked to a CVS on 7 Mile and Greenfield in Detroit.
Stomach, arms out, arms out, arms out.
She was told to get out and lie on the ground. When officers asked for her name, she responded, God.
They're letting us know that they decide who lives and who dies.
Investigators believe the shooting stemmed from a custody dispute of the 3-year-old child. And while they say Donaldson doesn't have a criminal record, mental health issues were uncovered.
We're not going to allow anyone to use mental health as escape.
It was October 5th, 2025, a Sunday that began like any other, but by dawn, it would become a scene of horror no one could forget. Inside a modest, well-kept home sat the lifeless body of 45-year-old Ada Mae Simmons-Jones, a woman known for her warmth, her strength, and her unwavering love for her family. To the world outside, she was the kind of person whose laughter could soften the hardest day. But that night, her laughter had been replaced by the echo of gunfire. Police officers entered through the front door, stepping carefully through a home that still smelled faintly of dinner and candles.
Inside,
the television was still on, a children's cartoon frozen mid-frame, casting eerie colors across the living room walls. Upstairs, in one of the bedrooms, a small child slept soundly, unaware that her world had just shattered. On the floor near the kitchen, Ada lay still. A single gunshot wound to her head. The shell casing rested inches from her hand. Nearby, officers found a handbag, a woman's purse, its contents scattered. And inside that purse, a driver's license. The name printed on it made every officer freeze. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a burglar. It was her daughter. The address on the ID matched an out-of-state location, Cincinnati, Ohio. The name, Riley Donaldson, 22 years old. Detectives exchanged glances as the pieces began forming an impossible picture. A daughter suspected of murdering her own mother. Outside, the night air was thick with disbelief. Neighbors gathered behind yellow tape, their whispers trembling through the chill. They had seen a car earlier, a dark sedan that pulled up quietly, headlights off, around midnight. It stayed for barely 3 minutes before driving away. 3 minutes. That's all it took to destroy a family. The police began retracing the hours before the shooting, piecing together fragments of a night that would later reveal a storm of resentment, pain, and obsession. What they didn't yet know was that the motive had been growing for months, a battle not over money or revenge, but over love. Because at the center of this tragedy wasn't just a mother and daughter, it was a child. A 3-year-old girl caught between them. Ada Mae had been caring for her granddaughter for most of her short life. She had taken the little girl in when things got unstable in Riley's world. Family members said Ada never did it out of judgment, she did it out of love. To protect her grandchild. To give her peace. But to Riley, that decision had felt like a betrayal. And over time, the bond between mother and daughter, once inseparable, began to rot under the weight of resentment. Now, as Ada's body was carried out under a white sheet, officers quietly moved the sleeping toddler into protective care. The 77-year-old woman who had been in the home, Ada's relative, stood on the porch, trembling, unable to understand how this could have happened. Inside that home, time seemed to stand still. But for detectives, a haunting question began to rise with the morning sun. What could drive a daughter to pull the trigger on her own mother? And what really happened during those 3 minutes in the dark? Before the world knew Ada Mae Simmons-Jones as a name on a headline, she was a mother who built her life on quiet strength. Friends described her as the kind of woman who never turned anyone away, a mentor, a caregiver, and a light to everyone she met. She lived in Southfield, Michigan, where she worked hard and devoted herself to her family, especially her granddaughter, a 3-year-old little girl who had become the heartbeat of her home.
When was the last time you ever did some childish stuff with your grandbaby? And me, it's almost every day. I'm in the hotel. I'm teaching her the great thing about
To Ada, family wasn't just blood, it was purpose. Her house was warm, full of family photos and laughter, a place where everyone knew they were safe. But beneath that warmth, something fragile had started to crack. Her daughter, Riley Donaldson, lived miles away in Ohio. At 22, Riley was young, spirited, and independent, but also deeply conflicted. Those who knew her said she could shift from sweet to unpredictable in an instant. She had dreams, but she also carried frustration, resentment, and a fierce need for control. The breaking point came when Ada was granted custody of Riley's daughter. It wasn't a punishment, it was protection. Ada had stepped in when life around the child began to spiral. But for Riley, it felt like betrayal. In her mind, her own mother had taken her child, and with it, her sense of power, her identity, and her pride. From that moment, every phone call turned into an argument. Every visit ended with tension. The love between them twisted into something sharp, something dangerous. Ada still opened her door to Riley, still believed that one day they'd find peace. But those closest to them saw a change, in Riley's tone, in her eyes, in the way she spoke about her mother. Something dark was growing, a quiet rage masked as love. And on the first week of October, that darkness began to move. Riley drove across state lines to Michigan. To everyone else, it looked like a daughter visiting her mother. But to Riley, it was a confrontation waiting to happen. The next time Ada saw her daughter, it would be the last. In the days leading up to October 5th, subtle warnings rippled through Ada's quiet life, the kind of red flags that only make sense when it's too late to stop them. Riley had been restless. Those close to her said she spoke of her mother in strange, shifting tones, one moment with affection, the next with fury. She was obsessed with the idea that Ada had stolen her daughter, a belief that grew stronger every day. Texts became shorter. Calls, more heated. The arguments always circled back to the same point, the child. Ada, patient as ever, tried to calm the storm. She reassured her daughter that this wasn't about control, it was about safety. But words weren't enough. Riley wanted her child back, and somewhere along the way, she began convincing herself that Ada was the enemy standing in her way. Family members began noticing Riley's instability. Her mood swung violently, and her words took on a tone that felt off, detached, almost cold. One relative later recalled that Riley had started talking about divine signs, about being chosen to make things right. At the time, they brushed it off as emotional exhaustion. But in hindsight, it sounded like something deeper, something that hinted at delusion. Meanwhile, Ada carried on with her life, unaware of the storm approaching. She cooked dinner, read bedtime stories to her granddaughter, and believed that her daughter's anger would fade with time. After all, she was her child. Mothers forgive. But that forgiveness would soon be met with betrayal. On the night before the murder, a dark sedan was seen driving slowly past Ada's home. The same car would return the next night, creeping into the driveway just before midnight. Riley's phone would later reveal searches that painted a chilling picture, directions to Southfield, firearm-related pages, and messages left unanswered. Whether it was premeditated rage or a sudden, uncontrollable break, only she knew. For Ada, the last red flag came in silence, when the phone stopped ringing and the night grew still. Because when her daughter finally arrived at her door, she wasn't coming to talk. It was just after midnight when Riley Donaldson's car pulled into the driveway of her mother's Southfield home. The neighborhood was silent, the kind of suburban stillness where even the wind seems to hold its breath. Inside, Ada Mae Simmons-Jones had already tucked her granddaughter into bed. The house was quiet, peaceful, unaware that tragedy was pulling up just outside. Riley's car lights were off. Cameras from nearby houses later captured her stepping out, moving fast, her body tense, her movements deliberate. She clutched something in her hand, something that gleamed briefly in the light. Then she walked up the path and disappeared through the front door. From that moment, 3 minutes passed. Only 3. Neighbors reported hearing what they thought was a door slamming, maybe a loud pop, maybe a thud. No one called 911 right away. It wasn't until morning that anyone realized what that sound truly was. When police arrived hours later, Ada was found lying near the kitchen floor, a single bullet wound to her head. There was no struggle, no sign of forced entry. Just silence. The purse left behind at the scene told the rest of the story, Riley's identification, her phone, even her keys. It was as if she'd come for one purpose and fled before she could think twice. Upstairs, the 3-year-old granddaughter slept through everything, her small world untouched by the chaos unfolding beneath her feet. In another room, Ada's elderly relative sat trembling, too afraid to move, her memory blurred by shock. Detectives pieced together the timeline. Riley had arrived, entered quietly, stayed for 3 minutes, and then driven away toward Detroit. Surveillance footage showed her car heading south, disappearing into the dark. For Ada, those 3 minutes marked the end of a lifetime of sacrifice and love. For Riley, they became the irreversible act that would haunt her forever. No one would ever know the exact words exchanged inside that home. But one thing was certain, the confrontation wasn't about hatred. It was about control. And in that fleeting moment of rage or madness, Riley took from the world the one person who had loved her most. When Riley Donaldson fled her mother's home that night, she left behind more than a body, she left a trail. Detectives didn't have to look far, the purse abandoned at the scene held everything they needed to know who had been there. Her driver's license. Her phone. Her fingerprints. Even her car was caught on neighborhood surveillance, a dark sedan speeding away from Bainbridge Drive just minutes after the gunshot. Police quickly issued a statewide alert. Within hours, they were tracing her movements across Detroit. But Riley wasn't hiding the way most fugitives do, she was unraveling. She drove erratically through the city, muttering to herself, as later witnesses would tell police. When officers finally caught up to her near downtown Detroit, she didn't run. Instead, she stepped out calmly, looking at the officers with vacant eyes. What she said next chilled everyone who heard it. She called herself God. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was conviction, as if she believed she had done something ordained, something righteous. The detectives who arrested her said her demeanor was detached, almost serene. She was aware of her rights, asked for a lawyer, but her words before that, the declaration that she was God, hinted at something far deeper. Inside the interrogation room, investigators pieced together the evidence. Ballistics matched the shell casing found beside Ada's body to a firearm registered in Ohio, linked to Riley. Her digital trail showed searches leading up to the night, maps to her mother's home, and messages that hinted at a final confrontation. Police Chief Elvin Barron later told reporters that Riley's actions weren't random. They were calculated. She knew what she was doing, he said. She made the drive, went into that home, and in 3 minutes, changed everything. The custody conflict over the little girl had consumed their lives, and in the end, it ended both of them. Ada's granddaughter, miraculously unharmed, was taken into protective care. But even that small mercy came with an unbearable weight. The investigation was airtight. There was no mystery, no unknown suspect, no missing weapon. Only a mother dead, a daughter in custody, and a family ripped apart by an act that defied comprehension. But the question now wasn't who did it. It was why. Was it hatred, desperation, or the fractured mind of someone who had lost touch with reality? As Riley sat in a Detroit jail cell awaiting formal charges, the community of Southfield mourned. A mother was gone. A child was orphaned in every sense of the word. And the city whispered one question that no one could answer. How could love turn into this? When the news broke that Riley Donaldson had been arrested for the murder of her mother, disbelief swept through both Michigan and Ohio. The story didn't sound real, a 22-year-old daughter accused of executing her own mother in a 3-minute visit. It was the kind of headline people read twice, hoping they'd misunderstood. Riley appeared in court days later, wearing a jail-issued uniform, her expression unreadable. She stood silent as the charges were read: first-degree premeditated murder and possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Her voice barely rose above a whisper when she confirmed her name for the record. Prosecutors painted a portrait of calculated rage. They detailed how Riley had crossed state lines, armed herself, and driven to Southfield with intent. They called it deliberate, an act planned in cold blood, driven by obsession over a child custody dispute. The evidence was overwhelming: her purse left at the scene, surveillance footage showing her arrival and departure, and the ballistic match tying the bullet to a weapon traced back to her. But as the case unfolded, another side of Riley began to surface, one that raised haunting questions. Her declaration of being God, her flat affect, her disconnected responses, all of it pointed to the possibility of a deeper psychological break. Her defense attorneys hinted at mental illness, suggesting Riley's actions were driven by delusion rather than hatred. Still, for Ada's family, none of it softened the blow. Her husband sat in court, his hands trembling as he listened to the recounting of that night. He told reporters outside the courthouse that Ada had never kept their daughter away from Riley, never refused her access to her own child. She loved them both, he said. She was just trying to protect her granddaughter. Riley was ordered held without bond. The court declared her a danger to herself and others. As of now, her case remains in its early stages, awaiting psychiatric evaluation, hearings, and the long, painful process of trial. There is no sentence yet, no closure, just silence. The kind of silence that follows when justice is still trying to find its footing amid grief. In that courtroom, 2 generations of one family were gone, one buried, the other behind bars, and a child, too young to understand, left to grow up in the shadow of it all. After the sirens faded and the court hearings began, the quiet streets of Bainbridge Drive never felt the same again. Neighbors who once waved at Ada from across the lawn now walked past her house with heavy hearts, their eyes lingering on the driveway where everything ended. The candles, flowers, and teddy bears left on her porch told a story of heartbreak that words couldn't. Ada Mae Simmons-Jones had been more than a mother and grandmother, she was a pillar in her community. She was the one people turned to when things went wrong, the one who showed up with comfort food and prayers. To lose someone like that, and in such a way, sent shockwaves through Southfield. Her husband's grief was the kind that couldn't be spoken. He said Ada had been his peace, the heartbeat of their home. Now that heartbeat was gone, replaced by an unbearable silence. And then, there was the little girl, 3 years old, too young to understand why she couldn't go home, why everyone around her whispered when they said her mother's name. She had lost her grandmother, her protector, and her mother, to the system that now held her behind bars. In a single night, her entire world vanished. As for Riley, she sits in custody awaiting trial, a young woman whose life now stands still inside a concrete cell. Once, she was Ada's little girl, the child Ada had carried in her arms. And now, she's the reason Ada will never come home again. What makes this story so haunting isn't just the crime, it's what it says about the human heart. How love, when twisted by control, pain, and pride, can turn into something unrecognizable. How the people we love most can sometimes become the ones we fear the most. And when you strip away the crime scene tape, the legal jargon, and the headlines, what remains is a question that echoes through every corner of this tragedy. How does a bond strong enough to give life end with taking it away? This is the story of Ada Mae Simmons-Jones, a mother who gave everything for love, and a daughter who lost herself trying to reclaim it. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Fatal Whispers for more true stories that expose the darkest corners of the human heart. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Because every whisper tells a story.